Today we're going to review a set of key terms and concepts associated with evolutionary psychology, and then we're going to explore Darwinian medicine, an evolutionary approach to the study of medicine, which emphasizes the distinction between defenses and defects. Today we'll conclude by considering several examples from medicine, and then in the next lecture, Lecture 2, we'll look at psychological examples of Darwinian medicine. There are 12 key terms and concepts that we'll be covering in this first section of the course. And these terms will be grouped into 3 parts. In the first part, covered by the first 2 lectures, we'll cover the topics of Darwinian medicine and the ideas of defects and defenses. In the second set of lectures, we'll cover some of the concepts from cognitive science and ethology. Finally, in the third part of this section of the course, we'll cover some concepts from evolutionary biology and rhetoric. Next, I'd like you to take a moment to watch a brief video about Darwinian medicine. In this video, Richard Dawkins interviews Randy Nesse. After you've watched the video, I'd like you to answer 3 questions about Darwinian medicine. For each of these questions, it would be helpful if you wrote these questions down and their answers in your notes. The first 2 questions asked you to paraphrase the core logic of Darwinian medicine. The third question asked you to come up with your own example that illustrates the Darwinian medicine perspective. Take a moment now to watch the video and answer the questions. Welcome back. Darwinian medicine involves the application of some of the core logic of the adaptationist program from evolutionary biology to the study of medicine, in the same way that evolutionary psychology is the application of the adaptationist program from evolutionary biology to the study of the mind and behavior. Evolutionary psychologists are keen to point out that not every interesting aspect of human behavior or mental activity is a good candidate for an adaptation. Evolutionary psychologist David Buss argues that there are 3 products of the evolutionary process: adaptations, byproducts of adaptations, and random effects or noise. The biologist George C. Williams was the first to apply evolutionary theory to health, and he did this in the context of senescence. Randy Nesse summarizes the relevance of evolutionary theory to medicine when he says that all biological traits need 2 kinds of explanation, both proximate and evolutionary. The proximate explanation for a disease describes what is wrong in the bodily mechanisms of individuals affected by it. An evolutionary explanation is completely different, according to Nesse. Nesse argues instead of explaining why people are different, it explains why we are all the same in ways that leave us vulnerable to disease. Why do we all have wisdom teeth, an appendix, and cells that can divide out of control? Darwinian medicine can be defined as an evolutionary approach to the study of medicine, which emphasizes the distinction between defenses and defects. To appreciate this distinction, it may be helpful to consider a thought experiment. Imagine a mouse, metaphorically, as a sort of robotic vehicle with a computer-like brain. Now, from the mouse's point of view, cat odor smells very unpleasant. Perhaps the unpleasant odor serves as a warning, alerting the mouse to the presence of a cat. Now imagine a drug that dulls the mouse's sense of smell. Do you prescribe it? On the one hand, if the mouse's reaction is a defect, you might want to prescribe the drug. On the other hand, if the mouse's reaction is an adaptation, a well-designed defense to protect it against cats, then perhaps you would not want to prescribe the drug. In this sense, you could define a defect as a flaw in the design of a structure or mechanism. By contrast, a defense could be defined as a mechanism that is designed to combat a particular threat. In this light, the human capacity to sneeze seems like a defense, a mechanism designed to expel pathogens from the body. In their book on Darwinian medicine, Randy Nesse and George Williams apply a Darwinian medicine perspective to mental illnesses and emotional problems such as depression. Their argument begins with medical examples such as fever as a defense against colds or viruses. They then apply their argument to the discussion of mental illnesses, including depression. They argue that many psychiatric symptoms, such as low mood, may turn out not to be diseases themselves, but rather defenses akin to fever or low blood iron levels. To consider this, let's look at the examples of fever and low blood iron levels. Is fever an adaptation? Well, in many ways, fever seems like a defect. Fever is uncomfortable and painful, it creates a hostile environment for normal bodily functions, and it's associated with disease, such as infection. Yet fever is an effective defense against infection. In fact, fever is a coordinated strategy of temporarily raising the basal temperature, creating a hostile environment for microscopic foreign invaders. This brings us to our final example from the field of medicine, iron deficiency. Iron deficiency is associated with reduced iron in the bloodstream, a decreased availability of this important nutrient, which is often associated with disease such as infection. Yet iron withholding is an effective defense against viral infection. In essence, iron withholding works as a coordinated strategy of removing iron from the bloodstream and storing it temporarily in the liver. This prevents viruses from using iron as a necessary resource for their own replication.